If you're looking to hit the reset button and supercharge your health and vitality, then I want you to mark your calendars for our next PLANTSTRONG retreat. It is nestled in the serene and absolutely spectacular town of Black Mountain, North Carolina. The dates are April 14th to the 19th, where you can indulge in bountiful buffets of plant-based fare that are expertly crafted to nourish your body and help you fall in love with the lifestyle. We have an insane culinary team that has cracked the code on preparing delicious and satisfying meals. They're going to fill you up without weighing you down. I want you to enjoy best-in-class educational lectures and empower yourself with all of this incredible knowledge. Dive deep into the science behind PLANTSTRONG living through these lectures led by renowned experts like cardiologist Dr. Brian Aspel, Dr. Michael Clapper, and Doug Lyle. Gain insights, tips, and strategies to enhance your life and get answers to your most pressing personal questions. You can even play pickleball with all of us. Get ready to rally with my team, along with me on the pickleball courts. Whether you're a seasoned pro or you're new to the game, join in on the fun and experience the game that is taking over North America. We'll offer lots of other opportunities to move your body, from challenging hikes to gentle yoga. All in all, this experience is crafted just for you. Don't miss this incredible opportunity to revitalize your health, connect with fellow health enthusiasts, and embark on a journey towards a vibrant, PLANTSTRONG life. Visit plantstrong.com today to learn more. I'm Rip Esselstyn, and you're listening to the PLANTSTRONG podcast. We at PLANTSTRONG get asked all the time, what supplements should I take? How do I know if I'm in fact deficient in something? And what brand do you recommend? Well, we answer all of those questions and more today in my conversation with a person who is doing it right. He is the founder and the CEO of Complement, Matt Tullman. He and his team of experts have taken a maniacal and lengthy pursuit to engineer what I believe are the best supplements for plant-based eaters. And they've done the work to validate their innovations by having everything verified with third-party testing. In the Esselstyn family, data is king, and Matt has done a lifetime's worth of research to produce what I think is the perfect complement to a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. Over the years, I have watched a lot of influencers start pitching supplements, and like you, I've rolled my eyes and snubbed my nose. But we all live different lifestyles, we have different goals, and we process foods in our own unique ways. That same research that highlights the power of plants for long-term health also identifies a few key nutrients and omega-3s that, while technically available in plant foods, aren't always consumed in adequate amounts. Take a deep dive with me today, and I think you'll see Matt has done the homework and is 100% aligned with our philosophy at PLANTSTRONG. I was so impressed that I asked Matt to create an exclusive offer for our audience. You can save 30% when you enter the code PLANTSTRONG at their website, lovecomplement.com, and complement is spelled COMPLEMENT, or by clicking on the link in our show notes today. As you'll hear Matt stress repeatedly today, supplements are just that. Health starts first and foremost with a whole food, plant-based diet, followed by positive lifestyle interventions like good sleep, movement, and social connections. From there, once you know your numbers, you can start to fill in those gaps that may need a little boost. And I 100% agree with this approach, and I will stand alongside Matt and his team any day. Understanding our wonderful bodies is a lifelong learning process, and I hope that you appreciate this hefty dose of education from Matt Tullman as much as I did. Matt Tullman, what's going on?
Hey Rip, how you doing?
Uh, I am doing very, very well. I just went up to Connecticut this last weekend for my Irish twin brother's 60th birthday party, and it was a blast. And I got to hang out with him and a lot of high school buddies that I haven't seen in years. And it's wild to look at all these people that I haven't seen since they were young cats and they're now old cats. And it's kind of hard. It's a hard pill to swallow, Matt.
Well, I don't want to, I don't want to age you, but I think you probably look better and certainly bring a certain energy that your friends in high school don't. Is that true? Did you look around and say, like, God, you guys are old and because you're not old, Rip. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I joke that I want to be you when I grow up, you know?
Well, Matt, what if I said I wished I had your entrepreneurial spirit and guts when I was your age?
There's a fine line between stupidity and gutsiness, right? It's
Yeah,
like that saying about brilliance and insanity are really really close on that spectrum.
yeah, yeah. It's funny you say that. I'm actually right now. I'm I'm listening to Elon Musk's by Walter Isaacson. I'm listening to his book on tape, and you nailed it. That's what he is, like insanity and brilliance combined. And what Elon Musk has been able to do with his just kind of never say never, and you say this can't be done. Well, watch me. It's
Yeah,
pretty incredible.
yeah. I don't want us to get too far off topic, but
I know. I know.
there's some great lessons there. One of which he always I haven't read it, by the way. I've downloaded it and I plan
Yeah,
to listen to it really soon. But
yeah.
one of the things that comes out in his philosophy that you often hear about is like this idea that if it's not based in the laws of physics,
Hmm.
right, then it's not impossible, right? The laws of physics are the only limiting factors, and even that he's trying to disprove, right, with his literally rocket science. But if it's not based in those laws, it's not impossible, and I think that is an incredible mindset.
Yeah. Well, he's also one of his mindsets too is a maniacal sense of urgency, right? I
Yeah,
mean, he wants things done. He wants everything done yesterday, and he drives people so hard. But he's been able to do what people thought was impossible. So speaking of impossible, I want to talk about you, Matt, and what you've been doing. So let's just dive into when did you know, like at what age did you know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur and wanted to be, go into business?
oof, I still don't know that I want to be an entrepreneur. At some point, I actually thought to myself that, I wouldn't wish this upon my kids. I think a lot of people say, I want my kids to grow up and be an entrepreneur. It's like, I think there's some sort of defect that has led me to this occupation, and I don't know that I would want that for a loved one. But to answer your question more directly, I don't think when I had the opportunity to start working with some folks in venture capital, I said yes to that job, which, by the way, was an unpaid job. But I just knew these guys were successful. They had taken an interest in me, and that was an opportunity that I should take, even though I had no idea what venture capital was and I couldn't spell entrepreneurship.
Right.
I still, by the way, probably can't spell entrepreneurship.
It's it's a
However,
tough
I have
word.
learned I have learned a little bit about the venture ecosystem and the roles we play as founders and trying to solve problems that otherwise, would not be solved because maybe they look intractable, like we're talking about with Elon Musk, that
Mm.
there's no incentive structure there for some big business to take on these crazy moonshots. And so I had, like I said, the great privilege to start off putting together a venture fund with other people's money, and that gave me a great insight into this world that looked really fun from the outside. And so I started pitching my own ideas. At that time, my first business was in education technology, and we were trying to help K through 12 schools transition from textbooks to a more digital environment for teaching and learning. And we can spend as much time or as little time as you want talking about that, but I don't think it's probably unfortunately, even to this day, 15 some odd years later, it's probably still unsurprising for people to hear that there's a real disconnect between how kids learn, and how we operate in the world outside of classrooms. You know,
Mm,
the average textbook at that time was 7 years old. 7 years old. And that may work for the laws of physics or math, right? But in a lot of cases, you had kids learning, literally the geography and the politics of the Middle East in the midst of a moment when those lines are being redrawn and those
mhm,
countries are being renamed. And it was kind of a silly thing, not to mention the fact that with technology, you can create all of this interactivity. You can really bring a classroom to life in a way that you have kids and teachers understanding where am I? Because you have this immediate feedback with testing. And if you're moving on in the lesson and you're leaving half the class behind, you can get that immediate feedback loop and you can pause and try to address the subject in a different way. And there's all these benefits obviously that come with technology. So I'll leave it at that. Happy
well,
to
yeah.
go.
But before you leave that, what was your passion that led you down that path to schools and
Yeah.
antiquated textbooks and this new interactive technology?
Honestly, it doesn't have anything to do with technology or textbooks. It has to do with education, which I still believe is sort of a foundational aspiration that we should all be focused on, because I think a highly educated population is going to see less of all of the seemingly intractable ills that we face as a society, right?
Mm,
Whether it comes to obesity and these metabolic disorders and heart disease and cancer like we face, and we will talk about more today, or if we're talking about bigotry and racism and anti-Semitism and homelessness and poverty and all these different other challenges that are really the root cause of a tremendous amount of suffering in our
mm,
society. And I just fundamentally believe that if we have a better educational system, if we have a higher degree of education across the entire population, we're going to solve a lot more problems. We're going to treat each other more empathetically. We're going to have less of these health challenges. So for me, so much of what we do today in focusing on health and wellness, as well as back then, it just comes down to education.
mhm, mhm. Well, I'm going to hold up my glass of water and say, "Here's to education, Matt."
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, it's what you and the Esselstyn clan has been doing for how many years, right? It's all about education. We can create products that make the process easier, hopefully building habits easier, like all of the incredible plant strong foods that you guys create, like the supplements and non-food nutrients that we create. But those are just, those are nice to have. Those are hopefully making people's lives easier.
Yeah.
The real core is the education. The
Mm.
the real it's the inspiration, and it's hopefully the information that we can deliver to people that can change lives.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to get into Compliment and why you started Compliment and what your philosophy is there. But first, I want people to understand just a little bit deeper about Matt Tullman and what makes him tick. Because, you and I, we didn't meet that long ago. It might have been, I'm going to say 8 months ago. And what happened is you guys invited me to be part of your Plantapalooza summit that you guys were throwing. I think it was back in October or November of 2023. And I thought I was going to be interviewed by Matt Frazier. And I was interviewed by you. And I had no idea who you were. And after the interview, we ended up talking for a long time about being fellow CEOs of different your company and my company. And it was a really I felt heartfelt conversation. I learned so much more about you and your company, so much so that you decided that you would come down and you partook in maybe 3 or 4 days of our Sedona immersion in
Mm.
October, and so we got to hang out there as well. And so I'm just fascinated with you, Matt. It's such a, I would say, young age. You seem so precocious. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you now? Are you 34, 35?
35, soon to be 36. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be 60 in a couple days. Incredible to think that we're almost 25 years apart. uh,
Yeah.
but I remember you telling me, because I peppered you with questions. So you went to SMU, right? You went to SMU. What'd you major in SMU?
Political science. Political
Okay.
science. The
Political.
backstory there,
Yeah.
briefly, is that I was on the path towards a business degree because I figured that was, had some utility in it. But the classwork, the coursework, I should say, was so boring in the business school curriculum. It was literally people teaching you how to use Excel,
Mm.
and I was like, well, this seems like a waste of money, and I was paying for college, so I at the same time I was in these elective classes. They want you to have a broad taste, so I just signed up for random things: anthropology, sociology, political science, history. And I was like, wow, these professors are like trying to change the way you think. They're trying to reorganize the way you view the world. They're really investing into these lessons every single day. And meanwhile, you have this like adjunct professor from, who's running a business on the side and just, comes in and teaches you,
Yeah.
this Excel script. I'm like, this seems like a waste of time. So for better or worse, I majored in political science and international relations, which to this day I think is a good degree because it helps you see how the world is actually put together. That there are
Mhm.
these people making laws, and that that I think is a an important way to understand the world we operate in. But I've yet to really find a direct use of anything I've learned in college and in my day to day.
Well, and you flew through SMU, didn't you say you graduated in like 2.5 years or something like that?
I don't like much of anything that's organized or forced upon me, and I got out of there as quickly as I possibly could with a degree in hand. But yeah, as quickly as I could, and I've been privileged to be running organizations for 15 years now.
Yeah, yeah. And so how many different organizations, companies have you been a part of over the last couple of years? 3, 4?
um, Let's see, that's a great question. A lot of them. We've been really blessed to participate in a lot of different businesses and different roles, incubating a couple. Some of the stranger ones, like a glass blowing studio and event space, which is still going in Chicago, called Ignite Glass Studios.
Right.
I was able to participate in a tea shop called Argo Teas, also still going. In a solar company, SoCore Energy. That one was sold to Southern California Edison. But my baby, like I said, where I spent gosh, 5 years or something, really really trying to understand and fix some of these issues in the public education system predominantly, was our education technology business. That was the one that I really sunk my teeth into. And then since then, and we can talk about the transition, but I lost a loved one to heart disease, and I ended up spending 30 days in what would become end of life care.
Mm,
So the quick backstory is my grandfather was going in to get a peg tube put into his abdomen. The epiglottis, a little flap at the back of your throat, which keeps air or food going in the right tube, wasn't working for him anymore. He was 85-ish years old, 84 years old. And unfortunately, there's no corrective surgery at that age. If you're born with a birth defect, that's a really simple thing to go in and fix. But they just decided, hey, 85, you're on your way out anyway. Let's
mm,
just put a tube directly into your stomach, and for the rest of your life, you'll be fed this solution called 2-Cal right into your abdomen. And that was the beginning of me really understanding, food as medicine, food as this thing that is so much more than just the nutrients that you're putting into your body.
Mm.
Even if you can survive on this sludge directly into your abdomen, food is so much more than that. It is social, right? It's familiar, it's habit, it's taste, it's pleasures, right? And needless to say, now fast forward 10 years, we also know that food and your microbiome starts in your mouth with the way that your saliva and these enzymes mix with your food. And so, like I say, that was just an eye opener. I immediately knew that a plant based diet was the solution. We can talk a little bit more about why I thought that was the case. And 10 years now, 10 years later, I think almost exactly,
Yeah,
I've been vegan to this day.
right. Yeah, so I that was gonna be my next question. So, like, why the passion around a vegan slash plant-based lifestyle? And, before you answer that question, um, do you call it vegan? Do you call it plant-based? Do you have a term that you use?
Gosh, Rip, you and I should get on the same page here because I was just debating it with some folks on my team because they used plants predominant. And I was like, what is plant predominant? Like, how many syllables do we need here? Like, we got plant centric, plant forward, plant predominant, like plant based, right? Vegan. Um, so I mean, the quick answer to your question, which is a bigger topic, but I call myself vegan because I believe in the ethical lifestyle related to veganism, which
Mm,
centers around, a life minimizing harm to other sentient beings. I'm on the board of an animal sanctuary called Love and Arms here in Colorado, and I think once you go down the path, whether it starts off as a motivation based in sustainability and understanding our ecology and our relationship with the physical world and how we rely on things like water and soil, that's a wonderful place to start. Whether it starts off with animals, that's a wonderful place to start. For me, it started off selfishly. I
mm,
was just trying to figure out how to survive longer, like how to stay out of the hospital. But once you go down that path and you start pulling on these threads and you start understanding, what we eat has ripple effects that are far, far greater than just what's on the plate. It became really clear to me that I didn't want to be a part of that system, and so I call myself vegan because I try to take those steps to reduce harm.
mm,
Plant-based, as I would call it, might not necessarily have that same motivation. You might, eat a whole food, largely plant-based diet, but maybe you eat a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and that's not for me to judge. And then down the road, plant-centric, plant-forward, plant predominant. I have no idea what those things mean, but I'm glad that they're eating some plants. That seems to be a good thing.
yeah, 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 leaning into the plants for sure.
Plant lean. I've also heard the plant lean, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, well, but so your grandfather
Yeah.
died. You saw him with this feeding tube getting this sludge into his body. And so did somebody talk to you about like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
all the
The
benefits
quick
of plant-based or like
so
who
when I
who
was
who or what was like the spark that ignited it besides you seeing your sick grandfather?
Yeah. So I had been vegetarian since I think high school or so. I have a terrible memory for this stuff, but for a long time, based on an uncle who was given a cancer diagnosis, a terminal cancer diagnosis, and found some temporary relief in a raw vegan diet.
Mm,
The quick backstory to there, and I hope it's a as a warning to everyone, is that my uncle went to the doctor and said I have back pain. So the doctor gave him pain meds, right? 3 6 months later, he goes back and he says, my eyes hurt, like I've got blurred vision, whatever. And the doctor says, oh, you just need a stronger prescription for your eyeglasses. Goes back again 3 6 months later, goes, look, doc, like I got these headaches,
mm,
and he goes, well, maybe let's do a body scan, whatever. And they found that he had tumors all over his body. He was in the Vietnam War. He had been exposed to Agent Orange. that's probably a likely, carcinogenic route to that symptomology. And sadly, they said there's nothing we can really do here, right? I mean, the brain, the tumors were in his brain, all along his spine, causing obviously the headaches, eye issues, back pain. There's nothing we can do for you. You should get your affairs in order. Um, my aunt and uncle rejected that idea, and they said, "No, we're going to fight this thing." So they went and they found remedies that were being talked about, right? And folks that you and I now call friends. And they decided that essentially a raw vegan diet, in addition to a lot of what one would call alternative healing modalities, some of which we got to try out as a family, kind of in solidarity. We did a lot of this stuff. Like, I mean, he went and had these fish like sucking toxins out of the bottom of your feet. Like they tried everything that anyone could say. This is how you bring the body back to a state of healing. And it worked, or it seemed to work. When he was given, 2 weeks to 2 months or something, and I get some of these facts a little bit wrong. At that time, I was in high school and far away from it, but hearing the stories and hearing the stories about how he had lived past the prognosis over and over again, just kept living and saw on the scans that these tumors were actually starting to shrink. And so it was giving them tremendous amount of hope. It changed our family's life because, like I say, something clicked for me and I saw ground meat in a very different way at that time. I've never been able to eat a burger since, right? I just went straight to black bean burgers because like that just made more sense to me. Far be it from me to say that I was vegan or anything like that at that time. It was not philosophical. I didn't know that stuff. I just knew there's something to the way we eat and whether or not, we're thriving, and enjoying this vibrant health, or something goes wrong. And um, unfortunately, the story with my uncle ends tragically because they went one day to the oncologist and said, "Look, these scans are working. What do you say about it now?" And as I hear the story, they said, "I don't know anything about that. But what I do know now is that you're a candidate for chemo because you're making such great progress with your whole food plant based diet. Now let's give it the 1-2 punch. Let's do chemo in addition to the diet." And I think what probably wasn't understood is that he had spent the last 6 months detoxifying his body, right? Bringing his body into the state of healing. And chemo is one of the most poisonous substances known to man,
Yeah.
right? And so he started chemo, went into a coma a few days later, and passed away. And again, far be it from me to say that I'm one to speak about the intricacies of cancer and
Mhm.
the treatments, and it's such a incredibly tough time. But the takeaway for me is that food is a path to healing, and that was really the eye opener. So fast forward when I was in that hospital with my grandfather, and I realized that there's not a lot that we can do for someone when they're 85 years old and they're suffering from all sorts of, symptoms related to heart disease. But how do we prevent heart disease? And that's when it went back to the China study, for instance, and some of those early books, that we had read as a family to understand that there are options, and there are remedies to these challenges, and the best one is to prevent them in the first place by living this way as early and as often as you can.
Amen. Amen to that. So your next great entrepreneurial endeavor would be Complement, right? You're now the CEO of Complement. How long has the business been going on? 5 years?
Seven,
7 years. 7 years. 7 years ago, you started Complement with Matt Frazier, if I'm not mistaken. And what what was the purpose behind starting Complement? Because everybody loves to hate supplements, right? And
yeah,
supplements come with a ton of, I think, of baggage and skepticism. I know that I for the most part, my entire life, have been very, very skeptical
Yeah.
of supplements. And I know there's a
That's well,
few,
you should be.
and I
You
know that
should
there's
be.
probably a few that we should be taking. But why did you decide? All right, you know what? This is going to be my next endeavor. A supplement company.
You
Uh,
know,
I want to know.
the truth is it wasn't, and I'm pulling up my phone because I gotta show you. So, because I had just found this photo for the first time in a long time, and it kind of proves it. So I had been on a very whole food, almost raw diet without supplements, because as you know, there's a lot
Mm.
of criticism, and I was fully on board with the just eat plants and everything will take care of itself wagon. And about a year and a half, 2 years into eating that way, I had all sorts of weird symptoms. Like I said, I just found this. Those are my fingernails. You can see the skin is peeling as well, and those fingernails do not look healthy, do they?
Yeah, well, the one in the middle is okay. The other ones don't look so good.
You're right. It wasn't all the fingernails, but they were looking pretty rough. They're like peeling off. I also had psoriasis on my elbows, knees, armpits, and so I went to the doctor, who of course did these blood tests, and they said diagnosed me with rheumatoid-like inflammation. He said that my blood looked like a 65-year-old with arthritis.
Mm,
And it was obviously the vegan diet that I was clearly deficient in certain things. And I needed to eat red meat for the iron, fish for the omegas, and probably some other things that he didn't know about.
yeah.
He referred me to a rheumatologist to probably get on some powerful hormone therapies or whatever else that they do to get inflammation under control. I said, "That can't possibly be right." Again, goes back to the whole college thing where I'm just a really pig-headed person, I don't like to be told what to do.
Uh,
And I went back to the literature, and I really dug deeper into whether or not the plant-based diet is the healthiest diet, whether or not you can get everything you need on plants, and I came to the conclusion that it absolutely is the healthiest diet for all the reasons that you and I talk about too much, so I won't get into them. But high fiber, high water content, high nutrient to calorie ratio, all those reasons. But that doesn't mean that, food is perfect. And it
mhm.
doesn't mean that all of us are perfect every day in what we eat. And so we can get into those details in terms of why one would want to be more careful or maybe take some supplemental nutrients as well. For me, I identified B12, vitamin D, and omega 3s as like the three things that were probably missing. I started supplementing those. I started testing
Let me ask you
myself. Yeah.
before you go. So those three, and do you know, like off the top of your head, like what percentage of America or Americans are deficient in D3, omegas, and B12?
Vitamin D, there's what one would call a vitamin D epidemic in terms of deficiency. The deficiency, you always see the headlines. I
Right.
don't know the specific numbers as of today. That's a quick Google that
I
someone
think it's
can
about
go do.
65%.
Yeah,
65%.
it
Yeah.
ain't good. Likewise, B12. I mean, we supplement our cows, right? We inject cows with B12. We fortify milks with B12. It's an incredibly important. It's an essential nutrient, and it is widely not consumed sufficiently by any plant eater or carnivore. Again, I don't know those numbers right off the top of my head, but I can tell you B12 is also high in terms of the number of people who are deficient. Omega is tougher because I think the science is not as hard with omega threes. There's some debate on how you test it. There's some debate on optimal levels. There's some debate. It's not like the same. It is an essential nutrient in the sense that we cannot produce it in our bodies, but it is not the same as something like B12, right? In terms of the lengths that folks have gone to demonstrate if you don't get X or Y as an RDA, you're going to see X or Y down the line. I think we'll get there. To me, my read on is if you look at a population like Japan, their omega levels are like 10 to 11%, right? If you look at their blood, you do a fat analysis, you do the high spectrum chromatography, right? Like, and you actually look at what are the fat molecules in their blood. They're looking at 10 to 11%. They eat a ton of fish over there.
Yeah.
They may also be getting a lot of microplastics and some nuclear waste and all the other things that you don't want to get from fish. But they're definitely getting a lot of omegas.
Yeah.
And what you see is a significant cardio and cerebrovascular level of protection. Um, if you look at the US, we're hovering closer to 4 to 5% across the population.
Mm.
And you see a lot of potential for an improvement there relative to what I think we could see. Some of the stats that I've seen is that for if we could get people to an 8%, that is equivalent to extending your life by 5 years
Mm.
relative to where you are if you're at an omega-3 index of 4%.
Wow.
Now, again, they're looking at, it's, as you know better than I, nutrition science is not easy, right? There's a whole lot of conflating variables and looking at people over the course of their whole life. It's hard. But when they abstract as much as they can, they do these meta-analyses. It's pretty clear that if you're in that 8 to 11%, you're at a level that is like I say, cardio and cerebrovascularly protective. If you're down in the US level of 3 to 4%,
Mhm.
because again, that has nothing to do with plant-based. That has everything to do with the fact that it's not easy to get high quality omega-3s. Um, you're not going to get that same level of protection. They've computed that to be a potentially 5 years difference in terms of lifespan.
Mm, mm. Okay. So I interrupted you there. You were saying the three that you were really interested in were the B12, the D, and the omegas. Yeah.
Yeah. So uh, I started supplementing. Long story short, 3 months later, my skin and nails started to improve. The psoriasis actually was the thing that cleared up fastest. Went back to get a blood test. All those markers of inflammation had right sized within 6 months. My nails are fine. 8 years later or something.
Oh, they're
Uh,
gorgeous.
yeah,
You could be a
yeah.
Ken model.
And thank God I cut my nails because that sometimes is something I forget. So that would have been really embarrassing if I was showing everybody. But yeah, 8 years later, I still get quarterly blood tests, and everything's great. I'm probably healthier. I'm certainly fitter than I ever have been in my life, and I attribute it because I've been taking these complementary
Yeah.
nutrients in addition to B12, vitamin D, and these omegas. We've looked at it and really said there are some complicating factors. There's some stories that we can tell about why one might want to look at these 8 other nutrients, or I should say 8 total nutrients, as being a perfect complement to a plant-based diet. And I'll stop there because I know
Yeah.
we want to pack a lot into this conversation. I want to get in the way of your narrative.
Well, I love the name compliment. I mean, it's so brilliant. How did you come up with the name compliment? Was it
It
just
just
hits you?
makes sense because the philosophy, right, which you and I both believe in so much, is that you vibrant health starts with whole foods. It's always got to be there. And actually, I'm like the worst CEO of a supplement company that you can find because the first thing I tell people is like, supplements ain't gonna save you. We have this like
Mhm.
quick fix culture where it's like, oh, if I just take these reishi mushrooms and I combine them with these like incredibly high doses of magnesium and they put it all together and like I'm gonna have vibrant health, and it's we know that's not to be trusted if anyone tells you that, right?
Yeah.
Supplements ain't gonna save you. It starts with whole plants. That needs to be the center of your diet, is these incredible, vibrant little things that have all these nutrients, right? In addition to enzymes and prebiotic fiber and the water content like we've talked about that all matrix in this way that we've evolved to thrive on. It's got to start with plants. Then after the plants, I would tell people to work on sleep and activity, right? So get your food right, your whole foods right, get your sleep right, get your activities right. Soon after that, it's the other pillars of lifestyle medicine, in case people haven't caught on where I'm going with this. You know, it's your social interactions, it's finding purpose and meaning in your daily efforts, right? And if you get all of those pillars
Mm,
dialed in, right? Then you probably also want to look at some complementary nutrients because every diet is going to have peaks and valleys in terms of what we're consuming, whether that's because of seasonality, like literally the seasons change, right? We don't notice
mhm.
that much anymore, because we're getting pears from Guatemala in the middle of winter. But seasonality does affect the nutrient quality of what we're eating. The way we've changed our soils for the worse,
Yeah.
right? Modern agricultural practices have absolutely decimated the microbial health of our soils. And so things like B12, right? It doesn't matter if you're eating dirty vegetables, which is, by the way, a terrible approach to getting a incredibly important neurological agent like B12. But hey, if you want to eat your dirty vegetables as a path, that still probably doesn't have all of these bacterially derived vitamins and minerals because our soil is dead. It doesn't
Yeah.
have that same life. So I could go on and on. We can talk about the specific nutrients, but the point, to answer your question directly, is complement just makes sense when you look at it in that whatever you want to call it, that system, that matrix of all these different inputs that are required to really find that incredible vibrant health that we're all looking for. It has to start with whole foods, and then these are really the complementary things that you can add on once you get the rest of those pillars dialed in.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, we met. You were interviewing me for Planapalooza, and the big irony there is that we, Plant Strong Foods, had just been investigating actually doing some supplementation because we know about the B12, right? How everybody should be supplementing, even if you're not eating plant based, you want to be supplementing with B12. The fact that 65+% of the population is low or deficient in D, right? Is also very important. And then, the omega 3s is just, there's so much information around there that to me suggests that maybe as a nice insurance policy, you might want to be supplementing with that DHA and EPA to help, because everybody's conversion enzymes from the short chain alpha linolenic acid into these longer chain DHA and EPA is different. So we could be eating the
Mhm.
exact same thing, but because of your genetic, right, diversity with these enzymes, we might not be converting the same. So we started looking, and it's amazing to me. We were looking for co-manufacturers that can make them, and how many are just putting, fillers, crap. What's the capsule? What's the form? And when after the conversation, or after you interviewed me, I started asking you questions, and every answer you had, you'd gone down that path. You'd done the serious homework. You'd done your due diligence, and I was absolutely so impressed. And so
Well,
the fact that you guys are doing supplements right, and you don't have a laundry list of 80 different products that you're selling, right? I mean, you've got like a handful of products. Also, to me, lends credibility to the fact that you guys, you you there's a certain truth and substance, I think, in compliment and what you guys stand for, which
well,
which
it's
really which really resonated to me. And then obviously after meeting you and spending time with you, I realized what a class act as a human being you were. So I'm what can I say? I am a fan. I'm a fan of you. I'm a fan of what you and Matt and company have done with Compliment. And so what I'd love to do, Matt, I'd love to talk about some of the products that you guys carry. And I'd love to start. Why don't we start with the Complement Essential? because you mentioned
Yeah,
earlier the 8 different kinda, things that people should be getting. So what's
yeah.
what is the Complement Essentials all about?
Well, let me first of all, thank you for the kind words, and let me start by commenting on a couple things you brought up, which is,
Yeah.
earlier in the conversation you talked about how supplements have a bad rap, and I said that they should, right? And people should be hesitant uh, and not necessarily quickly to trust the manufacturers of certain supplements. Because in doing this for this many years, I could tell you some really scary stories about what people are willing to do,
Mm,
because they just, lack that ethical clarity, and that's why I always joke that, it's not the USDA standards, the FDA standards, the organic standards. Like, we look at those and say, okay, let's go past those, right? Let's look at what am I willing to give to my growing children or my wife through 4 pregnancies, which is like
yeah.
the height of, nutritional intensity. And that's truly, I mean, we've joked, but it's been a true sort of mainstay in our conversations from the very beginning when Matt Frazier and I got together and launched Complement and said, it's got to be good enough for our families, right? And because we wouldn't give our kids like a bunch of fillers and excipients and all this stuff, we wouldn't play around with these numbers as some other manufacturers might do. We wouldn't do these proprietary blends which allow us to hide what is actually in
Mm.
this product if we're giving it to our families, right? And so I just say that because that's really the north star for us, and it's the highest threshold that we have to meet to feel good about what is put out there. And happy to share some of those horror stories about other manufacturers, but I'll wrap up that part by saying, you called out that we don't sell a bunch of random
Mhm.
stuff. We don't.
Mhm.
In fact, we've been very careful. We only sell whatever it is, 5 products, because we truly believe that those are what is complementary to a plant-based diet. And it's kind of crazy when you look at some of these copycat competitors that we have, and they're selling like vegan vitamin C. It's like, look, man, eat an orange, all right?
Mm.
Like, it's got
Mm.
a ton of vegan vitamin C, and I'm pretty sure all vitamin C is vegan. Like,
Yeah.
this is just like you trying to take advantage of people, and we're never going to go down that route. That's just not where we are focused. For us, it's about how do we create products that really align with our values and do something special and unique for the plant-based community.
Well, and I love that you are so singularly kind of focused on that niche, right? The plant-based community. Because to me, you're kind of in some ways leaving leaving a lot of business off the table by having that be your messaging when you probably have some of the best forms of the best B12 and D and omega 3s on the market. So I think that this should be pushed out beyond just the plant based. But to me, what it signifies to me is, and you guys talk about this on your website, when you thrive on your plant-based diet, the whole plant-based movement thrives. And that
Right.
to me again is a nice indicator of where you guys are coming from, right? What and that
Yeah.
you truly want the plant-based movement to thrive because it's so vitally important to humankind.
Yeah, exactly. The reason we don't have any interest, I shouldn't say we don't have any interest in serving others, but we have a
Yeah.
focus on serving the plant-based community because that is our mission, right? It is to fix these, epidemics of ill health, the many of which you and I both know, 88% of people are metabolically unfit. We know the solution, and it's not supplements, right? It's whole food and plant-based eating. That's where we have to go. And it's just as you said, how many times have you been in a conversation with somebody and they say, "Oh, I used to be vegan," or "I tried being vegan, but it just didn't work," right? Like, there are far more people who used to be vegan than there are people who are currently vegan. And that's a real problem if we care about this movement and we want to grow this community. And that's what we're so focused about is how do we ensure that when someone goes to the doctor's office, like I did, and the doctor says your vegan diet is the problem, how do we equip them going back to education with the intellectual tools to fight back and say, you know what? No, no, my vegan diet is great. I've got the fiber and the water and the nutrient to calorie ratio and all these different things are dialed in. And by the way, I've got B12 and D3 and K2 and selenium and iodine in this su- in this supplement. I'm good. What are you talking about, doc? Right? And if we can have those conversations, you're going to see a lot of people, stay the course with their plant-based diet. And of course, by the way, I use the doctor's office because it is such an emotionally charged place for a lot of people, and the doctor is a highly influential role in our society and in our individual lives. But let's go back to the beginning, right? The idea is how do we prevent deficiencies? How do we prevent any sort of symptoms that may lead you to that doctor's office? How do we ensure that you feel really, really good? One of our friends, uh, uh, she goes by Plentiful Kiki, so I'll just say that.
Yeah,
And
she's been on, she's been on the
Kiki,
podcast.
yeah, Kiki is a wonderful, wonderful woman. Her and Jeremy have such a beautiful family, and she tells this story about one day that Jeremy, is standing behind her and said, "Kiki, I think you have a bald spot," And we had zero relationship with Kiki at this time. She found compliments. She started taking it. I don't know how long she took it before she regrew her hair, and now she is like the number one promoter. And again, we didn't find her, we didn't send her any compliment, we didn't pay her to say that.
Yeah,
She's
yeah,
out there promoting us, and it's just like that is exactly the story that
yeah,
we want to see, right? Is that people are just they're fixing issues, right? They're thriving on this plant-based diet, and then they're going to stay the course because of that. So tell me, I'm happy to go, talk about specific nutrients. I don't
I
want to be too
yeah.
long-winded here.
No, I'd love actually to talk about some of your products that you have. Like, let's start with the B12. I
Yeah.
should say your triple B12, which is it's a multi-form um, vitamin B12. So why multi-form and why is that better? And you know, truth be told, I've got some of your B12 in my pantry, and it's a spray, right?
Mhm.
Everything else I've ever used, because B12 is something that I don't mess around with. Everything else is I just been taking a pill form. But you guys have your spray, and so why the spray and why multiform?
So the spray is easy. Sublingual absorption, as in through the mouth, under the tongue, is the best way to get that B12 in your body. If it has to go in your gut and work its way out, right, through
Mm,
the absorption pathways there, it's not going to become as bioavailable. So spray works for that reason. Secondly, if you have kids, super convenient. But it was really because, and I use that with my kids, but it's really because of the sublingual absorption
mm.
is better. We have three forms in there: methylcobalamin, adenosocobalamin, and hydroxycobalamin.
And how
Cobalamin,
and how long did it take you to say those three words? I still
I
didn't.
still, I,
I
I
still
still
didn't
can't say
say those three words.
doca docahexacoinic acid,
Oh,
DHA. I still
yeah,
can't say DHA or EPA. I will always default to DHA and EPA. Those two
yeah,
words
yeah,
I will never get. Doxahexacono. Anyway,
yeah, yeah.
so first of all, that's why it's sublingual. We chose those three forms because one is a coenzyme of B12, and that's the hydroxycobalamin. And that one is particularly good because it has a long half life. It stays in your body for a longer period of time.
Mm.
Methylcobalamin is actually the most bioavailable. It's the easiest absorbed, and then adenosocobalamin, equally together, has been shown to increase the bioavailability of all three. So in a clinical study setting, you might see a lot of the hydroxycobalamin. It's getting into a tongue twister here.
Yeah.
But what they've proven is that all three of them combined is actually the best way to move the needle in terms of the getting the B12 into your circulatory system and into the cells where we want it. And
Mm,
by the way, just to double down, I know you've recently been talking to um, Lori Marbus about these important
yeah.
micronutrients, but the B12, like whether you buy it from us or buy it from somebody else, like that is one that I mean, if you care about
What's
your
it?
nervous system,
It's a
yeah,
non-negotiable. That's a non-negotiable. Absolutely.
exactly. And there are some people still to this day in the plant-based community, some that you and I know and love and respect, who still aren't quite there for
Mhm,
everybody, they say, that kind of
mm,
thing. And
mm.
it's like, I just think it really undermines the message, right? Where we should speak with clarity that there are certain things that, and again, it's not a plant-based thing. It's
Yeah,
just a function of like this is a bacteria that we don't, or I should say a bacterially derived vitamin, and there is no good source in the human food system today.
absolutely. Well, what's interesting is I've got a brother that just got tested. He had his whole blood work done, and his B12 came back, and it was 275. So he was flagged for being
Wow.
low. And um, the last time that I had mine checked, I was 950. Right. So I was pushing, right around 1,000. And the range, if I'm not mistaken, is like 200 to like 1,200 ish, 13,
Yeah.
1,400.
You want to
Um,
be over 500.
okay, got it,
Yeah.
got it. So, and I asked him, and he just said that he hasn't been great about taking his B12 on a daily
Yeah.
basis, um, and obviously he doesn't, probably doesn't need enough Red Star nutritional yeast or enough of the fortified plant-based milks that are out there. So, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So he needs
I
some of the triple B12, baby.
Well, we can send him some for sure. Give me his address. I'll just quickly, I use this analogy of a house plant sometimes when I think about nutrients, and it's helped me a lot to, kind of for my own commitment, both to high quality whole foods. I always like to come back to
Mhm.
that, as well as why you should take, other nutrients every single day. And if you think about a house plant, you would never go 15, 20 days without putting water in a house plant. It's gonna start to wilt, right? That like and then you dump 3 gallons of water on top of it, right? And then you go another 3 or 4 weeks without feeding it. That's not an optimal way to give, the plant the nutrient it needs, right? The H2O. It's the same for our bodies, right? Our bodies every single day are putting a tremendous amount of work into this incredible orchestra, these systems to keep us thinking and moving and sleeping and doing all these things. Like you don't want to go 2 or 3 weeks without any of these nutrients and then just like try to take a bunch, right? And eat really well for 3 days and then go another 3 weeks where you're on the standard American diet. That's not right. We all know this intuitively, but somehow if I think about it um, uh, as a parallel with a house plant, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, yeah, 3 gallons of water once a month is not the same as 8 ounces every other day, right? So give your body that little drip of high quality nutrients. Again, first in the form of whole plant foods, but maybe in terms of non-food nutrients as well, if you determine that you need those.
yeah. All right. So you've also got another product called Complement Essentials, and that's a combination of eight different,
Yeah.
I guess you call essential vitamins and minerals.
Yep.
What are the eight, and why do you specifically have those eight in that formula?
Yeah, so we've talked about a number of them. Again, the core three that I like to point to is B12, vitamin D, and omega threes, DHA, and DPA. In
Yep.
addition to those, we have iodine, magnesium, selenium, zinc, and I think that's
And
eight.
K2. And K2.
Thank you. K2, I knew I missed one. It's a lot to remember. And each one of them, we looked really closely at all of the essential vitamins and minerals, worked with some PhDs, some MDs, some RDs, and said, if you're eating a diverse plant based diet, what are you getting plenty of,
Yeah.
and what are you getting that, maybe or a little of, or maybe you're getting none of, right? And we really thought hard about, and every one of those 8 had to really fight their way onto that list. And we can talk about the specific ones. We've already mentioned B12, we've already
Yeah.
mentioned vitamin D, which again has nothing to do with a plant-based diet. um, you know uh, Cows' meat and dairy milk are fortified with vitamin D because we have an epidemic in this country. It largely has to do with the fact that vitamin D is synthesized on your skin.
Yeah.
So if you wear clothing, or if you live in a box, or if you drive in a box, right, and you eat at restaurants in a box, right, like, if you're not exposing a good amount of your skin to the sun on a daily basis, you're going to be, on the lower end of that vitamin D spectrum. By the way, fun fact, you actually synthesize the vitamin D on your skin. So if you go to the beach and then immediately after you jump in the ocean, or you take a shower, you can actually wash off some of that vitamin D before it gets reabsorbed into your system.
Mm.
Um, I will also point out that vitamin D is fat soluble; it's not water soluble. So unlike B12, you do want to be careful about the upper tolerance limits, because you can have a toxicity to vitamin D. You cannot have too much vitamin D from the sun. There may be skin cancers concerned, but life's about
Yeah.
trade-offs. So you'll never overdose by being in the sun. Your body has that reabsorption mechanism to protect yourself. But taking 10, 20,000 IU a day, can certainly over time build up in your fat stores and create a toxicity.
Mm.
Really briefly, I'll just call out some of the other ones that I think are lesser known. We've talked a little bit about the long chain fatty acids, the omega threes, DHA and EPA. I'm so passionate about that one. We talked about the percentages and how low we find folks
Yeah.
in the U.S. might be, but I also think that within the plant-based population, there's a lot of misinformation. And again, it comes back to this like distaste that we have for any non-food nutrient source, otherwise known as supplements.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of it comes back to, oh well, I use flax oil, or I eat walnuts, right? Or I have hemp seeds, right? And it's true that those are a great source of an omega-3 called alpha linoleic acid, ALA, an easier to pronounce cousin of DHA and EPA.
Yeah. Yeah.
But A but the reality is about maybe 1 out of every 4 people actually have the genetic disposition, as you were referencing earlier, to convert internally ALA to DHA and EPA, and that conversion process is very, very inefficient. So if you believe that you need 1,000 milligrams of DHA and EPA every day, and I think you might even need more than that, but to each their own, you would have to eat so much in terms of ALA,
Hmm.
and to convert that over to DHA to EPA to get to that level. It's mathematically impossible to get there. And that is, by the way, if you are one of the genetic converters, if you happen to have the
Yeah.
genetic capability to make that conversion. So don't run the risk of having a teaspoon of flax oil in your salad. Um, and say that's where I'm going to get my ALA, or a handful of walnuts. You're not going to get the cerebral and cardiovascular benefits, let alone the protections that you can get from an algae based DHA and EPA. And I emphasize the algae because, for instance, for us, our algae is grown in sustainable ponds, right? So we reuse the water. The inputs are salt, the sun, right,
Hmm.
and water. We grow this algae. We drain the ponds. We reuse that water. We dry the algae. We suck all the fatty acids out of it, right? And so it doesn't have any of the microplastic. It doesn't have any of that toxic sludge or the nuclear waste that might be in our oceans. Which, depending on the brand, if you were to take a fish oil, you might be worried about. So again, find a high quality algae based omega. It's really simple. We actually, because of what I said before, have a separate product which is called omega complex. And there again, like the B12, we looked at what is the optimal combination of omega 3s that we can put together to give people that boost if they decide, that complement essential, which is our multivitamin. It's
Mhm.
a really minimalistic approach. It's supposed to be an insurance policy. It's not these mega doses like a
Right.
multivitamin. So for those who want a little bit more, we have the omega complex, and again, that's DHA, EPA. It also has ALA from flax, as well as stearidonic acid, which is SDA. And again, we looked at the clinical literature and said this is the best combination to really get that number up. And it's about 1,000 milligrams of omegas, of course, all plant-based sources.
Well, it's incredible to me, Matt, how knowledgeable you have become in this field, and your breath. I recently had Dr. Joel Furman on the Plant Strong podcast, and in reading his book, his latest book, um, Eat for Life, not Eat to Live, because Eat to Live was the one that he wrote back in 2001, 2002 that's sold millions of copies. But this is his most recent one, Eat for Life. He mentions how, he's been seeing patients since 1990, I think he said 1995. So a long, long time. And his specific specialty is nutrition, right? That's why he went to medical school. Like, he wants to specialize in nutrition. And he was telling me how he has seen so many people. And one of the major issues that he sees is people getting adequate DHA levels. And he said how adequate DH levels can prevent the amyloid accumulation that we get in our brain that can accelerate Alzheimer's and dementia. And then he also talked about how also a lack of DHA can cause brain shrinkage. What a crazy, scary term that is, especially specifically around the hippocampus. And so that's something that none of us wants. And so to me, I've kind of done a bit of a reversal based upon the science and talking to people that I really believe in and trust. And the omega-3s, I'm like, all right, I want to take that a little bit of insurance policy to know that I'm not getting the brain shrinkage and, inducing any amyloid accumulation in my brain. Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, and I did this. I started doing this before you and I met. So it was just coincidence
Yeah.
that we met, and I got to see again the degree to which you and your company are so passionate about bringing these products to people that are plant-based and wanting everybody to be able to thrive. So
Yeah.
I think you did a great job. They're talking about the omega-3s. I would like to ask you: is there anything you wanted to say about what I just said, or not?
The beta amyloid plaques in your brain is certainly something that I think all of us worry about, and I'm glad you bring it back to omega-3s. You're right, DHA in particular. I mean, I've got 4 growing brains in my house, and I think about DHA a ton. I don't remember the actual number, but by weight, if you look at a brain, by weight, it is composed of a very high percentage of DHA. And
Yeah,
that goes to the brain shrinkage, right? It's something like, I think it might be as much as 12% of your brain is actually made out of these fatty acids. So it's an
right.
incredible thing, and we shouldn't take it for granted. But I always like to be like I said, it's like the worst supplement CEO I could be, right? Because the other great way to prevent beta amyloid plaques, sleep.
Mm,
When you sleep, there's actually a fluid that goes it washes your brain, and it sweeps out this beta amyloid plaque. And I always think about that, like when I'm going to bed or when I'm not getting enough sleep, and I think about like that visual, like watering the plant and getting those nutrients every day, like somehow that visual of like I am washing out this stuff and making sure that all my white matter and gray matter is pristine and clean and preventing all
yeah.
that dementia. It's really important. So yeah,
Well,
take your omegas, but also get your sleep.
yeah. And another thing is somebody very, very close to me that also follows a whole food plant-based diet had a blood panel done, and their omega-3s were 3.5%. And we talked about where you want your percentages to be. And so to me, and it's not to me a matter of this person wasn't eating enough green leafies, because they're eating 4 to 6 servings of green leafies a day. They're doing 2 big tablespoons of ground flaxseed meal on their cereal or in their salads. They're doing a handful of walnuts a day. So to me, I'm like, well, maybe it's a fact. It's a genetic thing there where they just don't have the conversion enzymes, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Something like that. So again, all coming back to um, the importance of also knowing your numbers, right? I mean, let's know your
Yeah.
number,
Yeah.
and so I know that's something that you guys are working on as well.
Yeah. So the story I like to tell here, to emphasize is like it's kind of crazy that the status quo is for you and I both to walk into Whole Foods and see 13 or 14 different multivitamins, and they all are essentially the same because they're all just putting every essential uh, vitamin and mineral into that bottle, based on the recommended daily allowance or recommended daily intake, that comes from the USDA, right? It's kind of crazy that we imagine that what you would pick out is the same as what I need, right? And that the maximum level of customization is like man, woman,
Mm,
old, medium, or young. Like seriously, like that that's where we're at as a society. It's like that's not the best way to understand this incredibly important dimension of your health.
mm,
And so, with that in mind, we've developed a system called Insight, where you can use a finger prick, and then get a consultation with a registered dietitian, and then get a custom pill pack, which I actually just took mine. So that was poor planning. I always have like a half a pill pack laying around. My wife hates it.
yeah.
Um, but the point is that in each one of those is exactly what you need. For me, I actually take some additional B vitamins, alpha lipoic acid, extra vitamin D, more omegas, and complement essential. And that's just because for me, I've been low in vitamin D. I live in Colorado. It's really
Mm,
cold outside. I wear a lot of clothing, and I don't, just bake my face in the sun
yeah.
every single day in the winter. So I need a little bit more vitamin D. I have high homocysteine because of a genetic snippet. Alpha lipoic acid has helped me bring my homocysteine level down, which is part of our blood testing regime. That homocysteine can contribute to atherosclerosis and therefore heart disease. So I want to bring that down. I've seen that come down with a combination of B vitamins and alpha lipoic acid. And so when you think about the potential that we have to understand our numbers, like you're suggesting, and then to take these really simple steps to totally change the trajectory of our health, it's a no-brainer. And again, I'm the first one to say, like, if you're comfortable going to your doctor
Mhm.
and telling them, hey, I eat a vegan diet, I want to get a ferritin panel that measures iron. I want you to test methylmalonic acid. That is a long-term marker for B12 status. I want to understand my omega status, right? I want to get tested for all of these lipid panels, right? And anything else that they, of course, suggest. Um, do that, right? And then call us up and we can help you out with whatever nutrients you need, or go to Amazon. But I really do encourage people to do that testing because it is so easy. It really is. Sometimes it's expensive if you do go to the doctor's office. We've tried to provide this at-home solution that's a heck of a lot cheaper. Get tested. It's really, really important. It's so easy, and you just know where you're at, and then you can make informed decisions about what nutrients you might need, because like I say, we all have these peaks and valleys. Rip, when you and I got to spend that time in Sedona,
Yeah.
quick unsolicited endorsement for anyone who wants to change their life to go to one of your Plant Strong retreats, because man, that is so powerful just to
Mm,
be around those people with that energy. I came home in a totally different mindset. And to this day, whatever it's been, 3 months later, I am still way, way more whole foods than I was in the years prior. I definitely had lost, a little bit of that. Things
yeah.
happen when you have bunch of little ones in the house, right? And it's a life changing event. But anyway, getting back to it, you probably eat a lot more kale than almost anyone in the world does, right? So like, and so you're getting, a certain set of nutrients because you eat a lot of kale, right? Somebody else who eats a lot of spinach,
Mm.
might be getting a lot more folate, right? And they do handfuls of spinach in that smoothie. And so it's just understanding, what are the nutrients you're getting, and then how do you complement those nutrients with what you might need from a non-food source.
Hmm. Hmm. What is there anything that you guys are working on right now? Any new products that you're going to add to the repertoire, or you guys like feel like you're done? Or are you always researching and looking for new stuff?
There are a couple things that we have added carefully, because there are folks out there that want these less commonly consumed plant-based foods, right? They're not those complements that we've been talking about, right? You
Mhm.
can get them, um, but people are out there buying them for convenience. By way of example, things like we have a daily greens product which has chlorella and moringa and gluten-free barley grass, I should say, broccoli sprouts, right? Um, those are incredible superfoods if you want to use those names. I mean, they like in a teaspoon of this stuff, and it's just ground, chlorella, right? It's ground moringa,
Mm.
and you can get as much vitamin A, in like 1 teaspoon as you would in like a 2 cups of broccoli.
Mm.
And these are not fortified, right? These are naturally occurring vitamin A that comes from these incredible greens. But how many of us are actually getting barley grass or moringa or chlorella or broccoli sprouts? Broccoli sprouts, by the way, I always try to eat because of the sulforaphane,
Yeah.
which we hear all these things about sulforaphane maybe being an anti-cancer, but how many of us actually eat broccoli sprouts every single day, right? And so we wanted to provide a convenient way for people who are already looking for these things to know this is third party tested, that we do everything we can to reduce the levels of lead and other heavy metals, right? Like we really try to be sensitive to what is wrong with these other products in the world, and then how do we do it 10 times better, including down to, the packaging, which all of our packaging is compostable. We never use plastic. Even the packing peanuts, those little peanuts that get everywhere where you open the package. They're not.
Absolutely.
They're pretty big. Those are actually, they will melt in water and you can drink them. They are derived from potato. I will
Potato
admit,
peanuts.
uh, someone on our team actually did it. It was brave of them, but I stand by, like I say, we go the lengths to use even our cardboard boxes, right? Our post-consumer recycled
Uh,
materials. So we really feel, proud about that. The last one I'll say is we do have a protein product. There too, we don't believe that most people need supplemental protein. I'll again put on my hat as like the worst supplement company CEO. You get plenty of protein from things like greens, but let alone tempeh, tofu, beans. That's where I
yeah.
get most of my protein from. However, a lot of people like supplemental protein, including me, right? And that one in particular was so, I think, criminal when you look at what people do. Not to mention the fact that it all comes in these big half-empty plastic tubs that end up, decomposing for 30,000 millennia. Like
Yeah.
we're gonna have more plastic tubs from protein powder than anything else on Earth at some point. Um, but we really wanted to address something where if you put proprietary blend on an ingredient list, you can pretty much mislead the consumer in what I think are just really unethical ways. And so what we did was the exact opposite, and we put on the front of the package the actual percentages
Mm.
of each of the ingredients that we put in there. Because for us, what we found, and I believe to be the case, is that most plant-based protein powders are 99% pea protein.
Mm.
That's because it's an extremely cheap and it's an extremely dense plant-based protein. And we use a lot of pea protein as well. But you don't want 99% pea protein. You want a diverse complexion of, or I should say, combination of amino acids, because that's how our bodies work, by building up these amino acids. And so we built a complete set of plant-based amino acids by including almonds, pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, sunflower seeds, in addition to pea protein. And on the front of the package, you can actually see there's 12% almond in there. There's 14% pumpkin seeds. There's
Mm.
6% chia seeds. And so we really stand by that. I could go on and on for why I think that truly is a product that's 10 times better than what you would find out there. In addition to the fact that there's no sweetener, there's no flavoring, there's no artificial or natural flavors, nothing like that.
What about what's in the
Um,
chocolate? What gives the chocolatey flavor?
the chocolate does have organic flavoring. I'm talking about
Oh,
the unflavored one, where
got it.
this product started, is the cleanest thing that you will ever find. It is truly just, these protein sources in a bag. And so for those of us who believe you should flavor your smoothie with fruits,
Yeah.
at most a ripe banana, that's all the sugar you need. We did, as I was going to say, then add on a chocolate version to that. It's still, I think, cleaner than anything you're going to find out there, but you will see a little bit of sweetener and like I say, organic flavors, so that
Well,
way you can enjoy it.
we I know you guys claim to have the world's cleanest protein powder. I want you to know that we claim to have the world's cleanest pancake and waffle mixes. So, one of the things that my son does, my son's 16 and he's convinced that he needs more protein. And so he takes his protein powder and he combines it with our pancake
Yeah.
mix. And man, it is like lights out good and delicious.
Oh, by
Um,
the way, so my that is what I've been doing with Complement Protein and the Plant Strong pancake mix.
yeah.
Every Saturday or Sunday morning, depends. Is always pop-up pancakes, and I that is our tradition. I know it's the same for you, I believe, on Saturdays. And I have we used to gosh, what were we using before? Maybe there's a vegan version of like the Birch Benders. Anyway, I don't remember what it was, but we have switched over to the PLANTSTRONG pancake mix, which is awesome. The gluten-free one for my wife, by the way,
Mm.
super fluffy. And then sometimes, not always, because it's great on its own, but sometimes I'll add in the extra protein, and it's yummy. The protein gives it like a dense, like scone
Hmm. Hmm.
type of
Consistency. Yeah.
consistency. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. You also have a gut product.
Yeah.
So,
So there's a theme here. There's a theme here, and thank you for the opportunity to share all these details with your community.
well, listen, absolutely. And I want you to know it's my privilege because I it's funny how now that I have a food company, I look at things a little bit differently, and I have so much admiration for what you've done, what you've launched. As I've said 5 times already, the due diligence that you've put into this, everything from all the ingredients and your transparency and the fact that you're third party tested, and the fact that everything is so your packaging, your peanuts, your potato peanuts, everything is so environmentally friendly. So you really, Matt, you guys, you walk the walk when it comes to sustainability and being, in my opinion, plant strong. And so I'm a huge fan of you and
Well,
what you guys are doing. So
well,
yeah.
well, that goes a long ways. I was talking to my wife. By the way, those third-party test results are also available on our website. So if you want to go on there and see that it's past, E. coli and salmonella and other pathogens, but also, where it meets in terms of other standards, you deserve that information.
Mm.
And so we're really proud to have those right on any of the product pages as you're checking them out. So But thank you. It goes, it means a lot. I'll just really quickly say you brought up gut nurture.
Hmm.
There again was one where we just looked around and said, like, all these people are wasting so much money on these probiotics and kombuchas and and we again kind of starting off with that place of education decided what do we really want to tell the like what's the story that needs to be told here and it's one that says actually probiotics are probably the worst thing you should add to a gut that maybe experienced some sort of dysbiosis
Mm-hmm.
and the beautiful analogy that was given to me is like imagine your gut is this city and it's got all these inhabitants, right? It's got the virome and the bile and the bacteria and the, just tons. I mean, far be it for me to be the GI expert, but there's trillions of inhabitants of all sorts in your gut, right? And imagine that's a city and the city is actually really poorly managed. It's breaking down. There's no transportation systems, right? There's no police officers. The fire department's been disbanded, right? Like the city is in disarray. But you have all these trillions of people, these little things, the DNA of which outnumbers the DNA of our human body, right?
Yeah.
They're in there. And so your solution is probiotics, which is more bacteria.
Mm.
You're adding more inhabitants to an already totally messed up city. That's not the way to do it. Instead, you gotta rebuild that city from the ground up. You gotta nurture the inhabitants and the systems and the absorption pathways and the coenzymes and the digestive, agents and everything else that goes towards a properly functioning microbiota, right? The
Mm-hmm.
symbiosis that we enjoy with all of these friendly inhabitants. And so when we looked at it, we said, we're going to create a probiotic, but it's not going to have probiotics in it. Right? It's going to be in that. What we really want to do is nurture the gut. And so we put um, fermented vitamins, these like molybdenum and B vitamins, ginger, which we all know to help soothe the gut, and then postbiotics. So the way to think about it is prebiotics are the fiber that your gut bacteria feasts on. By the way, if you have a very low fiber diet, they'll turn inwardly and start to eat away at the lining of your gut, which can lead to leaky gut syndrome. Once again, an important reason why we need more fiber in our diet, which of course only comes from plants. But prebiotics are like the fiber fuel, right? Probiotics are the bacteria that eats that fiber, and then they excrete a number of these vitamins and other important enzymes, which are the postbiotics, right? And so what we did was, like I said, include the prebiotic uh, uh, fiber, the fermented vitamins, as well as the postbiotic endpoints that then we believe will nurture, which we developed with two incredible RDs who are GI specialists, and they've been using this cocktail with their patients for years to really great result. And so we wanted to
Mm.
try to make it easier for their community, but most importantly, bring the story that emphasizes that you shouldn't just add, sauerkraut and kimchi and kombucha and all these and take a probiotic. Most of those probiotics, by the way, are dead
Mm.
on arrival. Like it says like 56 trillion bacteria, and it's like why do we think that's a good idea to add 56 trillion bacteria to your gut in a single go? Like
Mm.
it's completely disconnected with anything that you might imagine we'd find in nature. But anyway, so for us, it's all about how do we nurture the gut so that we can take care of those inhabitants and then obviously add on new bacterial strains, which we get in plenty if we're eating a diverse set of raw fruits and vegetables.
Yeah. How long have you had that product available?
It's relatively new. It's
Mhm.
relatively new, just, maybe a year or so.
Well, if fiber is the main calling card that helps create a healthy microbiome and gut. What's the stats that I've heard are 96% of Americans aren't getting enough fiber, right? The RDA,
Yeah.
which is roughly, I think, 28 grams of fiber. So, yeah, I think it's just ridiculous. um, and the number one gastrointestinal issue that we are facing as a country is constipation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's nutty to me, and it all comes back to the main pillar that you and I have been talking about here today, which is, everything starts with a whole food, plant-based, you know, dietary pattern. And then from there, let's spread our wings and get the sleep and the socialization and the movement and the exercise. And then, like you have said, and the reason you've started your company, let's fill in any potential cracks here. Get some testing done. Let's see where we are, and then fill in the cracks as a nice little insurance policy.
Yeah. Couldn't couldn't say it better myself. And you brought up the fiber deficit in the standard American diet. I mean, man, that bears repeating, and that's why our obsession with protein, I think, is, I
Yeah,
mean, just crazy, right? Like we should all be really focused on fiber. And the worst part, as you just said, with the constipation, like I recently had a friend, not a plant-based person. She was asking me about our products and all that stuff, and she's like, "Yeah, I went to a dietitian, and she told me to take Metamucil, obviously for the constipation, um, and the probiotic to like get the gut going better." And I'm like, "Okay," and I had to start back at the beginning of my gut nurture spiel.
yeah.
And it's like, "Look, you got this city."
My God. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like, but unfortunately, people don't realize that, like, the best thing that you could do for your gut is eat a really big salad, like
yeah,
the kind of salad that has, the beans and the broccoli and all this stuff in there. Like, I guarantee it'll cure any constipation. If you add some ground flax seeds, I
yeah.
can guarantee you that you will not have a constipation issue.
Oh yeah. All right. So, Matt, anything exciting you have today besides working on compliment and taking care of your four kids?
Rip, thank you for having such a rich conversation about these things. As we talked about, it can be so over dramatized, so controversial, so religious in nature when it comes to conversations that should otherwise really just come down to the science, right? And
Mhm.
I hope I've emphasized enough times that we're all on the same team here. That it starts with whole foods, and then it's followed by all of these lifestyle interventions. And then you just want to be thoughtful about what nutrients you might be getting enough of or where you might want to fill some holes. And that's the message that we really want to bring to the table. It's one that centers in education around, what we're doing to our soils, what vegetables actually look like after a 3-week journey
Mm.
from Ecuador, right? And like what is actually happening in our ecology, in our relationship with the outer world. And I really, really am grateful for you offering this platform that we can have such a thoughtful conversation about it.
Yeah. Well, it's something that everybody asks about. What supplements do you recommend? What do you take? And, you know, it's something that I am super, super curious about. And I have found that, like I said, over the last year and a half, 2 years, it's something where I find myself wanting to get interested in it in different ways. And after finding um, you guys are doing so many things right that I am not going to get into this business. I have
But
no
you will take compliments,
uh
right?
That's right. I absolutely, I endorse you guys, and I don't want to spend 2 to 3 years going through all the headaches and everything that you had to go through to come up with these really, stellar products. So good on you, Matt, and everything that you and your team have been able to achieve in the last 7 years. I know it hasn't been easy, but man, has it been worth it?
Um, a visit to the Plant Strong retreat, followed by a healthy dose of the Plant Strong foods and a little bit of compliment, and you can change some lives. So
Good to
let's do
go.
it.
Hey, will you give me a big old virtual Plant Strong fist bump on the way out? Boom. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Rip. Really appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. I hope that you enjoyed this masterclass on the supplement industry from Matt Tullman. Don't forget, Matt has created an exclusive offer for all of you, offering 30% off your purchase at lovecomplement.com using the code PLANTSTRONG, or you can click on the link in our show notes for today's episode. I have my own little jar of Complement on the kitchen counter, and it's really comforting for me, having a sidekick to my lifestyle that I feel really good about. The Plant Strong podcast team includes Carrie Barrett, Lori Kordowich, and Amy Mackey. If you like what you hear, do us a favor and share the show with your friends and loved ones. You can always leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And while you're there, make sure to hit that follow button so that you never miss an episode. As always, this and every episode is dedicated to my parents, Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn Jr. and Anne Cryle Esselstyn. Thanks so much for listening.